Are you tired of feeling tired? Confused by the conflicting health information in the media? Maybe you can't walk into a grocery store without being overwhelmed by product label claims. Living a fast-paced, overstressed life? Are you or your loved ones being diagnosed or labeled with chronic illnesses? Finding balance and health in today's culture is a challenge we all face. Welcome to Quality Living with Leslie, where we debunk the myths, bring clarity to the confusion, and help expand the gap between health and illness. To get in on the show, call 888-565-1470. Now, let's get started. Welcome to Quality Living with Leslie. I'm Leslie Harrington, and I'm a certified functional wellness educator and diabetes paraprofessional. What that means is I empower people to, we have someone coming in, to be their own advocate, manage their numbers, and to look at health on a whole so that they can prevent and reverse disease. So tonight I have a guest on who is Freddie Santori. But to start off, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about Quality Living with Leslie and just a little bit about my story and what brought me here. You can listen to tonight's show at 95.3 FM, 1470 AM, and we are live streaming on Facebook at Quality Living with Leslie. And also to join the conversation, you can call in at 888-565-1470. I will start off by saying I am not a medical doctor and do not engage directly or indirectly in diagnosing disease, dispensing medical advice, or prescribing the use of any products or services as treatment for sickness and disease. This information is solely for informational purposes and is for people of normal, good health, and the information is not intended to be a substitute for proper medical care provided by a physician. You should always cooperate with your health professional of your choice with a mutual goal of building personal health. Okay, I had to get that out of the way, right? So how did Quality Living with Leslie come about? In 2009, I was on vacation with a girlfriend of mine in Key West, Carla, and we were at a bar going out after dinner, and she went to the bathroom, and when I walked up to the bar, a guy came up to me and said, "You look bored." And I wasn't really interested in communicating with him. We were tired. We were ready to leave. And he pulled out a picture of a handicapped child in his wallet, and it drove me to engage in conversation for a little bit. When Carla got back from the bathroom, we paid the tab, and I said goodnight. The guy stopped me, and he said, "You don't look bored anymore." And I didn't think that much of it at the time. Oh, hi. Hi. I didn't think that much of it at the time, but by the time we got back to the hotel, I knew something was wrong and something was in my body. And I said to Carla, "This guy drugged me." And I paid for that night for the next 8 years. Unfortunately, from that next day, I started having symptoms of dizziness and nausea and a lot of fatigue, and I would have trouble breathing and shortness of breath doing really simple activities like walking and talking on the phone. It took about 6 months for the doctors to tell me I had this condition called POTS. And the bad news with POTS is that they have no cure. But the good news in their mind was that they would be able to give me medication to help me with all of my symptoms. So I start taking these medications that I was told I would be on for the rest of my life. And I find myself on 5 medications in my mid-30s. And I work in the pharmaceutical industry, so it's a little bit embarrassing because most of the people that I work with would not take some of these drugs themselves because they know how dangerous they are long-term. I went to a regular cardiology visit probably several years into managing these symptoms. I was very good at managing my symptoms. I was very calculated in my lifestyle. I lost friends. I went through a period where it was very hard for me to work properly and travel like I did with my job at the time. And I was just frustrated at the system, at the whole process of the medical system. So when I was at my cardiologist, he said to me, "I've got bad news. You are pre-diabetic and your blood sugar is getting higher and higher." And I was mortified. I thought this guy was crazy. I didn't eat sugar. I didn't eat carbs. And I truly thought that he had the wrong chart, and I dismissed him. So it wasn't until probably the third time that he told me, which I was going regularly 3 to 6 months for blood work, that he said, you've got to start looking at this. And I was like, hold on here, let me look at my numbers. I had never asked for my numbers. I didn't even know what he was measuring. And I realized I was truly trending towards diabetes. I didn't know anything about diabetes. I was trending at a rate that would put me full-blown diabetic within 6 years. So I went into this frantic mode of desperately needing to understand what diabetes was all about and how I could prevent myself from getting there. When I went to the endocrinologist, I confirmed that the symptoms that I had from POTS and the drug I had been given many years before had damaged my nervous system, and I was experiencing, a continuing trauma from that event that evening. It wasn't until my mom was diagnosed with cancer, she was taking care of my diabetic, insulin-dependent father, that I really started to take control and realize that I had a choice in what I could do with my own health, knowing that my mom didn't have that same choice. She didn't have the same control over her outcome. So with that, I just dove in and I started studying nutrition. I went back to school. I became certified in several different functional diagnostics and transformational nutrition, and I learned everything I could about my body and my health, and I was able to eliminate all of the medications. I'm no longer on any prescription drugs, and I work really hard to try to help people to know that when they are diagnosed, that they don't have to let that diagnosis become their identity. And there are things that you can do and contribute to your own health and put quality into your everyday living, because some of the common things that are happening today are not normal, and people need to know that. And so the information that's going to be over the next few weeks for the show, or however long we carry this thing out, is going to be just a lot of information from all different walks of the world. And thank goodness for this evening, I have Freddie Santori with me.
How are you?
How are you?
Good. You're very modest about the story that you just shared with us, because I'm a type 2 diabetic, and I was introduced to you when my sugar was really out of control. And it was your teaching, your guidance that brought all of this stuff back into play. So you have a little bit more going for you on this particular show, which I'm excited that we're able to produce for you, because you're going to bring some of this information to the public.
Thank you.
And what I wanted to know is, how long have you been doing this particular work?
Well, I was in the pharmaceutical industry for 15 years, and having that understanding and that knowledge and being able to tie that into what I know now about health has been really a tremendous help for me. I've been doing the coaching now for a little over a year. I started with the Your Blood Sugar Bootcamp production. Last year, I developed a program. When I was diagnosed pre-diabetic, that was, at least 5 years ago, I started to look around for resources and information, and I couldn't find anything. All I found was my doctor told me I had blood sugar and watch your carbs. And I was like, well, what does that even mean? And I actually was at the peak of my fitness level. I was in the best shape of my life, taking care of myself. So I was struggling to find resources. And I realized that there are a lot of people that knew less than I did about nutrition who didn't have that information. So that's why I came up with Your Blood Sugar Bootcamp, was to kind of really make it simple and take it into really consistent steps for people to follow so that they can, reverse that blood sugar trend.
Now, your show can be seen tonight on two different sites, or Blood Sugar is a different site from the regular Facebook site, yes?
The Blood Sugar Bootcamp has its own private Facebook group.
Okay.
That is particular for the people who are members of the program. It's an online course. And then Quality Living with Leslie is my regular page that
and
shares information.
And that's how you can see tonight's show.
Tonight's show's on Quality Living with Leslie, Facebook Live, and also you can listen at 95.3 FM.
That's right.
1470 AM.
And there's a few people that I've spoke to, and Dawn has spoke to, and some of the health professionals that we deal with have spoken to, that you've helped them control and understand what it is that their bodies are going through, right? Because sometimes it isn't just enough to watch your carb intake. Protein is important.
Protein's important. It's not always just about food. It's not always about removing something. It can be combining something. It can be adding something. It's really, you've got a bazillion reasons for blood sugar impact. In my case, I didn't have issues with what I was eating and the physical activity I was doing, except it maybe working out too much. But mine was driven by cortisol and stress, and going through the experience of losing my mom, and then after taking care of my father who had diabetes and learning what it was the hard way, I realized that stress, sleep, dehydration, which is a key component of POTS, those were all significant drivers for my blood sugar issues. There's people around that think just because they're not high risk, they're not over 40, they don't have a genetic predisposition, they might not be having issues with their vision. Those people can still have blood sugar issues, but they might not know it.
And it's because of stress.
It could be because of stress. It could be because they're overtaxing themselves in their workouts. It can be because they don't sleep. I know people that sleep 3 hours a night. That's a hormone nightmare.
And Leslie, one of the things that I am still confused about is, what is normal sugar readings?
Normal by the ADA standards would be under 100 fasting, which means when you wake up after a period of 8 or more hours without any food. And then the range that you would be considered pre-diabetic, if you wake up between 1 and 125,
right,
that would be fasting. That would be considered pre-diabetic. Anything over that, you would be considered diabetic. That combined, they're not going to necessarily use that one single test to tell you that you're diabetic. That combined with a A1C, which is a 3-month average glucose reading. So that's going to tell you how you're averaging in general across the board for 3 months. Some people, it's about 2 to 3 months, depending on the person's actual blood cells. And that combined with the fasting, how quickly your body can recover from eating a high carb or high sugar meal, that will be impactful. There's a glucose tolerance test that's also taken. So there's multiple ways for them to come up with a true diagnosis of diabetes.
And the bottom line here is, if you eat carb light and protein heavy, drink a lot of water. Water is very essential to everything, right? And your sugar, when you wake up, is under 114, 115, and then you eat a meal. If you eat the wrong meal, your sugar is going to go up, right?
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that you have to be on any type of medication. You just have to watch what you eat.
That doesn't mean you have to be on medication. Medication is something that is established between you and your doctor. It has a lot to do with the cause. You do want to know what the cause is. I think a lot of people assume because their blood sugar is high that it just is because of food. And if you're trying to treat it because of a nutrition plan, 9 out of 10 times, if you're that person that has that diet, that has that low-hanging fruit, that they can make those types of corrections quickly,
right,
you're the lucky one. It's the people that wake up with those fastings, that do diet, exercise, and do all of the right things, that are waking up with high fasting because they're having issues with their thyroid, or they might be having some gut health issues and other factors that aren't going to be as visible just by nutrition alone.
Yeah. And it's funny because now I've lost almost 40 pounds because I had to get my weight down. It's amazing after you hit over 50 how important it is to keep your weight under check because of all the stuff that comes with it. And I go to restaurants now and I see people walking around that are over 50 and they walk around with these huge bellies and they just don't understand the damage that they have going on in their system. You may feel great, but tell us a little bit about what high sugar damage can do to the body.
Actually, it's very near and dear to my heart because, like I mentioned, when my mother passed, my father was diabetic, insulin dependent. My sister and I did not know really what that meant. We didn't know how to manage the insulin. We didn't have to, know how to get into that. And so we learned the hard way by finding him, in a almost induced coma, things like that. We are going to go to commercial though, so we'll pick right back up where we left off. So if you guys want to call in, you can call in at 888-565-1470, and we will see you on the other side.
Did you know you can be doing everything right, yet still be on the verge of diabetes? Our bodies are all different, and it's what we are doing today that ultimately determines our long-term health span. Your Blood Sugar Bootcamp will allow you to expand the gap between health and disease. Genetics, lifestyle factors, medications, hydration, stress, sleep quality, and external toxins all play a part in your blood sugar level. You don't have to be diabetic for blood sugar levels to wreak havoc on your energy and quality of life. Your Blood Sugar Boot Camp is an online program which offers the strategies to put you in the driver's seat to learn how to be in control of your own health. It provides proven strategies to reverse high blood sugar. You will learn how to measure and identify your biggest triggers, get educated on food choices, increase energy, improve sleep quality, and master stress management skills to get you back on the right track. To learn more, find us on the web at yourbloodsugarbootcamp.com. When you know your numbers, you can own your health. Take control of your health and contact us at yourbloodsugarbootcamp.com. Do you know your numbers?
You're watching and listening to Quality Living with Leslie. Overstressed? Looking for balance? Join our conversation, 888-565-1470. Hi, we are back here with Freddie Santori, and we were talking a little bit about how important it is with the diabetes and the impact that it can have, and some of the early stages with prediabetes.
Right.
And let me go back and tell you some statistics with prediabetes. Is there's 86 million Americans plus. You'll see that number is staggering and actually gets higher every time I say it. And that are pre-diabetic, and 90% of those people aren't aware of it. So that's my big initiative, is making the awareness to even go out and get your numbers checked.
Right.
Some of the risk factors and some of the symptoms, if you even have any, would be changes in your vision. But because sometimes at 40, your vision's changing anyway, so I think people dismiss that as a little bit normal.
Yeah.
You've got your high risk factors of being over 40, having someone in your family that's diabetic. But you can't take that and assume that you're not going to potentially be, because I was opposite. I didn't have those risk factors, and I was. And there's people that have the risk factors that are not diabetic. So those are some things. But the long-term damage, the damage is happening to your organs by having that extra glucose in your blood system for
Right.
long periods of time. And what happens is the walls of the capillaries, the tiny capillaries in your fingers, in your eyes, in your feet, start to thicken. And the blood flow can't get to where it needs to go. And that is where you start to see the diabetic neuropathy, and you start to have the more changes in your eyes, and then just overall quality of health. I will 100% tell you that I would attribute a significant part of my dad's dementia to his blood sugar issues and the mismanagement of diabetes for a period of time before he got to a place where he didn't have as much opportunity to make the changes that were necessary.
Is things like neuropathy, all those capillary, is that all reversible once you control your sugar for a long time?
You can control the furthering damage, but when you're talking about the capillaries and getting those are some things that you are probably going to be sitting with for a while.
Right.
So that's where it's so key and so important to catch this early. It's known to be a degenerative disease. It's something that's progressive. It doesn't have to be. You can take control. You can reverse those numbers and really reverse some of the damage that it might cause in the early stages.
Well, that's good to know, because it gives people hope.
Absolutely.
It's funny because I met somebody who actually put her hand on my arm and told me it's time to go see the doctor. And I didn't know what that meant. And that night I measured out over 300 on the sugar counter, and I went the next day to get that removed. My sugar has been as low as 81 now, and as high again as I'm going to say 176 is the highest that I've had since I've been under control. But it makes a difference. I can tell you, my eyes were starting to bother me. I thought I was losing my mind. And now I see better. So I'm hoping that I didn't create permanent damage, but the doctors are going to actually have me take eye exam. And I try to walk 3 miles a night. There are times that it's hard because I'm tired when I get home. And I've tried to eat right, eat clean. And I follow your advice, and I'm taking supplements and all sorts of stuff that we talked about a little bit.
So what would you say was the turning point with you? Was it when the girl touched you and just kind of that interaction struck a chord? Or did you have a particular instance or feeling? Were you starting to go in a direction?
Well, the person that I knew, she came up to me. She put her hand on my arm, and she looked at me. She said, "It's time to go to the doctor." And I said to her, "Why?" She says, "It's your sugar." And she was the only person in my life who's ever said that to me. Now that was my sign. You know, if you test your sugar and you're up there in numbers, you know, don't panic and just get a coach, and the coach will give you the necessary information that you need. And then you begin to do the right things, because you don't get there because you're doing the healthy things in life. You get there because you're taking advantage of your body and you're not living clean. And I wasn't living clean. I was up to 240. I'm down to 205 now.
Man, that's awesome.
And you know, I'm watching what I eat, how I eat it. I'm watching the clock. You have to eat small meals. And you have to change. It's a lifestyle. You know, do you want to live? That's really what it comes down to. If you don't care about dying young and you're going to blow up your sugar.
Yeah, and I call certain circumstances when your quality of life is shot, you're really just, you're dying, or you're living, or dying longer.
That's
so
right.
the people who are in their 80s, that are, their quality of life is just nothing, but they're going to live another 5 years just like that because they've got medication supporting them, or they've got that's what breaks my heart, is to see someone that just can't live their life with vitality and fullness, you know. But when you and I first sat down, we talked a little bit about the design of Blood Sugar Boot Camp and the initial phases of discovery, right? So I had you poking your finger and testing and kind of really identifying what your low-hanging fruit was, so the triggers that were impactful for you.
Well, the amazing thing for you is the first time you gave me an assignment. You said, when you get up tomorrow, I want you to drink 12 ounces of water and go for a walk. Take your sugar before, drink the water, go for a walk, and come back and tell me what happens. I dropped 23 points.
It's shocking, right?
I could not believe. I did it twice because I could not believe it. And then I said, you know, this lady knows what she's talking about. And, you know, there are some guys out there that are over 400, and we had them call you. And the camp, the blood camp deal, you got to sign up for that because it gives you guidance. It lets you try things, but it gives you guidance so that you don't hurt yourself.
Yes. Thank you for that.
That's the biggest gift you can give anybody under the circumstances.
Definitely. And it's not limited to people who think that they already know that they have high numbers. It's for people in general, like me, who were exercising and I was fit and I had all of these things happening that I didn't even know what my A1C was, nor did I really care to at that point because I didn't assume that it was any problem for me. But the cool part is when you really learn your numbers, and not just your blood. You know, I bet you're pretty aware of your blood pressure now, right?
I take it every day.
You're clear on the other parts of your body and the dynamics that are happening and what's going on. So I like that. Know your numbers. You really own your health, because you have to have a baseline. You have to know where you started in order to know where you're progressing. Just like weight. People are like obsessed with standing on the scale and looking at that 1 to 2 pounds that they up and down throughout the week, right? But they have no idea what their blood sugar runs on a day-to-day basis. And it's a really important number to be aware of, your A1C.
And you know, your body, it will tell you what you cannot eat. It will tell you the extent of exercise. It will talk to you. Absolutely. I think that the one thing, Leslie, that you've taught me more than anybody else in my entire life, because I beat diabetes one time in New York and it came back to haunt me, is that listen to your body. Your body will give you all that you need to hear to get healthy. And that's what you showed me. You explained to me different tried techniques, things that, you know, my dawn phenomenon from 3 to 6 was my biggest concern. And if I eat right during the day, my dawn phenomenon will decrease. Yeah. And here I am trying to knock it out the ballpark by taking all sorts of things at night, taking my drugs later at night, trying to see if that will work. But if you don't eat right during the day, your body's not going to metabolize the food correctly.
Absolutely. And it's never one thing. So what Freddie's talking about, the dawn phenomena, is that kind of a witching hour, I like to call it, in between 3 and 6 in the morning normally, where people's hormones are, when you're sleeping, that's like the time of magic, when all of the things are happening in your body, you're recovering, your body's being able to really do what it needs to do for your hormones. So you're having this massive surge of hormones during those few hours. And with people that have blood sugar issues, their insulin response doesn't, it's not just in that case because you're fasting, it's not just an insulin resistance that you're experiencing in your blood cells, it's actually from your liver.
That's
so
right.
your liver is pumping out, extra glucose, and it's not responding in the morning when it should to calm everything down. And people that have normal metabolism of sugar, everything kind of balances out. You wake up with a normal fasting.
That's right.
So that dawn phenomenon it's a tough one to kick because a lot of people just have that high morning fasting and they have a lot of really good management during the day, and that fasting is really the one that is hard to get your arms around because there's more dynamics to it. It's not controlled specifically by food.
Amazing. Yeah. And your first show is almost over. But it is amazing. I think that I think that if you are a high sugar diabetic, whether 1 or 2, you got to get a coach. It just makes sense. There is so much misinformation.
Absolutely.
I think that what Leslie can bring to the table to anybody and everybody is information. And if you know where you're going and you have the right information and you have choices to make decisions, that is the best thing you can do.
Well, in the Blood Sugar Boot Camp, it's 6 simple steps. So it's a 6-week program, but not to say that you can't go ahead and learn a little bit more about the sleep and the stress management. But really, it gives you ideas of what to eat, what not to eat. There's so much confusion out there. People don't know what carbs are.
That's right.
They don't know that. They'll go, but I eat fruit, but that fruit is a carb, and nuts are a carb. And there's all kinds of really good choices with carbs, and there's other ones that are not so optimal, and maybe you just need to manage the frequency. And there's just, for every one piece of information, there's always a conflicting opposite flip to that side, and that people really just need to know how it relates to them.
You got 1 minute to wrap up, but I just wanted to say sleep is important. She stresses that. She has apps to help you do that. Sleep is the important thing.
We have tricks, we have apps, we have hacks, we have all kinds of things in the Blood Sugar Boot Camp.
But thank you for letting me be your first guest.
Thank you for being my first guest.
I appreciate that. How do people get you? Give
Calm
me
me
your phone
down
number.
a little bit. So you can find me at leslieharrington.net. My email is laharrington@me.com. And you can find me on Quality Living with Leslie. You can message me on there on Facebook as well.
Perfect. All right. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining me on Quality Living with Leslie, where we help you know better so you can do better to be the best version of yourself. For more information, you can find me at leslieharrington.net. That's leslieharrington.net. Have a great week. Now, go out and share the health.
The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.